This is a Kemp Forum on Opportunity Zones. And my name is Jimmy Kemp. I'm president of the Jack Kemp Foundation. My father, Jack Kemp, was a champion of the American idea. And the mission of the foundation that we set up in his name is to advance the American idea. That idea that the condition of your birth should not determine the outcome of your life is at the core of the American idea, in which my dad believed. And as a foundation, we have had many Kemp Forum events, and our focus has been to talk about three issues that he cared about deeply. One, economic policy. If anybody doesn't know Jack Kemp, supply side economics and the Kemp-Roth tax bill of 1981 were among his most significant contributions politically. He was a congressman from Buffalo. And next, so we got economic policy, foreign policy. He cared deeply about preserving, protecting democracy and championing any democratic form of government anywhere in the world, and thought that America should be strongly supportive of any nation that was endeavoring to govern in this incredible way that we've been experimenting with for over 200 and however many years it is now. And then finally, the third area on which we have prioritized our focus is equality of opportunity. One of the quotes that he often used is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. By being here, you all are among those who care. You care about how people truly do lift themselves up. You care about the aspiration that this country stands for and represents. And this landmark legislation that we're going to be discussing today is great that it's been passed into law, but it's execution that matters. And to set the stage, I want you to understand the why the Jack Kemp Foundation is involved, why we're here at City Garage, why entrepreneurs and business leaders believe that Opportunity Zones is a great opportunity to provide capital and resources that distressed communities need so significantly. And there are lots of issues around the execution, and we believe that you all can help. We want this to be a day where we're interacting with one another, meeting a lot of people who are interested in the same things, who believe in the American idea. And I would like to start with a video clip of my dad talking about the inspiration behind what has become Opportunity Zones. So I believe we have this clip teed up.
That Governor Thompson in Wisconsin calls enterprise zones development zones. Governor Cuomo of New York calls them opportunity zones. We have talked about enterprise zones. Whether it's enterprise zones, opportunity zones, development zones, or job zones, the name or the title is less important than the idea that I think each of you in different ways have expressed here this morning. Creating entrepreneurship, opportunity, jobs, economic activity will lead not only to a healthier tax base for cities and states, in my view, but it would also lead to, if not the only answer, but it's one of the answers to some of the social problems we face. Senator Wellstone talked about entrepreneurship, education, and empowerment. I couldn't have said it better myself. Those are three elements that really, in any democracy, have to be present if people are to realize the upward mobility that has once been associated with the American dream, but that all of a sudden is becoming, if not extinct, certainly endangered. I want to say I can't imagine a bill that...
So my dad was the champion of enterprise zones. It was zeroing out the capital gains tax in any area that had been previously redlined by banks. And the policy grandchild of enterprise zones is opportunity zones that we're here to talk about today. I wanted you to know some of the history and the why. I also wanted to share a couple of quotes. My mom taught me that it was a good idea to read a proverb a day. There are 31 proverbs, and the Hebrew scriptures have a line that I thought was specifically appropriate today, and it comes from Proverbs 14. Whoever despises his neighbor is a sinner, but blessed is he who is generous to the poor. Do they not go astray who devise evil? Those who devise good meet steadfast love and faithfulness. In all toil, there is profit. I think that's my mom calling because she knows that I'm practicing what she preached. In all toil, there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty. We're going to be talking a lot today, but there are actions that are coming out of this talk. There are actions that have preceded this talk. And your call is to do what you're already doing, and hopefully this can help all of us not merely talk, but to act and stay engaged. One other quote that helps explain the why I care about this, why the Kemp Foundation cares about it, comes from Martin Luther King Jr., who, as everybody knows, he famously said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And he said that in any nonviolent campaign, there are 4 basic steps: collection of the facts to determine whether injustices exist, negotiation, interestingly, self-purification, the idea of being humble and recognizing that none of us is pure, and then direct action. Today, I hope that we can take the direction from the Hebrew Scriptures and from Dr. King and recognize that we do have opportunity. We have opportunity amongst ourselves, but in our communities, certainly here in Baltimore, around the country. And in order to welcome us to this great city of Baltimore, Maryland, we're really privileged to have the 50th mayor of this great city of Baltimore, a woman who knows about business, knows about education, knows about communication, Mayor Catherine Pugh. Please welcome Mayor Pugh. Here, and I'm going to move mine. There you go.
It really is exciting to look out here and see all of you here, because this is really a very important time for Baltimore and for the state of Maryland, and actually for our country. But Mr. Kemp, I want to say thank you. Thank you for
not Mr. Kemp, that's my
Jimmy. Thank you for being here, and we are really excited about this forum. Let me thank Weller Development as well, who are a great partner for the city of Baltimore, for hosting this. In Baltimore, we are poised to be the leading city in the nation on opportunity zones, and I want to tell you how we got here. Because in May of 2017, when I was attending the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Enterprise Foundation said to me, "Do you all understand opportunity zones?" "Don't worry," I said, "we will." And so I came back to Baltimore, assembled my team, and said, "Do you all understand opportunity zones?" And they said, "We will." And so I am so grateful to my team, including Bill Cole, and all of those who got together, who understood how important and significant this moment in time really is for our city. And so what you should know is that Baltimore, because of the work that we did very early, submitting our application, and I'm thankful to the governor and to our lieutenant governor, because we put together our proposal, I think, second to none. We are currently 28% of the state's opportunity zones. We submitted 44 opportunity zones, and 42 have been accepted. And so, again, I think we're headed in the right direction. And they are strategically located in areas in the city that we believed are really poised for growth. I'm often heard saying that almost the entire city of Baltimore is an opportunity zone. And it is an opportunity for us to create opportunities for local businesses, for residents, and for home ownership. I recently hired because I read an article where this individual said, "Is Baltimore going to be ready for opportunity zones?" And so I said, "Ben Siegel, We're going to be ready because you're going to be a part of helping us to get ready. And so for those of you who are looking for additional information on what we're doing in Baltimore, you can speak to our Opportunity Zone coordinator, Ben Siegel. Is Ben here? Stand up, Ben. I'm sure you're going to share some words today. This is an opportunity for us to match investments in the Opportunity Zones with what we have already created here in Baltimore. For those of you who don't know, we created a $20 million affordable housing trust fund, but we also created a neighborhood investment fund because I believe that it was important for Baltimore to show leadership in its effort to seek investment in our city and into areas that have been underinvested in for decades. And so folks said, well, how could you do that? Well, the way that we were able to do that is because when I walked into City Hall, there was a deal on my desk to sell garages in the city because they said, you know, the city really needs capital. And I tell folks that one of the things that I've been able to do is really understand the history of Baltimore. In 1972, we sold off our airport because the city at that time needed capital as well. We sold it for $36 million. And I'm sure that at that time it seemed like a lot of money. But can you imagine if we had leased the airport, still owned it today, because it would be to Baltimore what Atlanta's airport is to Atlanta, Georgia. So we didn't sell those garages. In fact, we kept them, we leased them, we capitalized them, and we raised almost $80 million. We paid off the debt to those 3 garages and netted some $57 million. $52 million of that money went into a neighborhood investment fund. Another $3 million is to go to community development corporations to help them to grow and expand throughout Baltimore City. And another $2 million will go to community associations so that they can build themselves up to be part of this growth of Baltimore City. So the creation of the Neighborhood Investment Fund, the Opportunity Zones, the Affordable Housing Trust, we believe puts Baltimore in a position poised for growth and development. And so we say to all of those who are out there looking for a city that is ready, there is no city more ready than Baltimore. So I also want to thank our great partner, Secretary Ken Holt. Ken Holt has been instrumental, along with the state and Lieutenant Governor, in helping us to tear down boarded-up houses in our city. And so we're really excited because I get to report to you that by the time middle of this year, we will have torn down 4,000 boarded-up houses, 25% of the city's 16,000 boarded-up houses. So again, I think Baltimore is moving in the right direction. It will be, and it is, the investment of the private sector, along with the state, along with us, that will change the trajectory of Baltimore. And I'm so grateful to see Margaret out there, who's been a really great partner for so long. Thank you so much for all you've done and all that you will do. So again, I hope that you all learn a lot while you're here, but more importantly, I hope that you spread the word that there's no more city, there's no other city more poised, more ready, more encouraged by your presence to move a city forward, looking for investment, and to expand that investment in such a way that we lift the least while we lift all of us. Thank you all for being here. So I also wanted to take a moment to say, Jimmy, to the Kemp Foundation, on behalf of the citizens of Baltimore, thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of this opportunity for our city.
Thank you very much.
Mark, we left one on the stage for you as well. Okay, thanks for hosting. Thank you all.
I'll give it to him. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. One thing about the Kemp Foundation, we're a not-for-profit 501c3, and while my father was a Republican, one of the things that he's best known for is his ability to engage people regardless of what party, regardless of what socioeconomic background, regardless of what race, religion, and in that clip that you saw of him, he was talking about Senator Wellstone. Senator Wellstone was a Democrat from Minnesota. Wellstone hated supply-side economics. He agreed with George H.W. Bush, who called my dad's basic economic passage voodoo economics. And Dad thought that Wellstone could never agree with him on anything. But when they came together around enterprise zones, that was an example of the type of political engagement that I think all of us hope to have, and we really appreciate Mayor Pugh, we appreciate the governor and lieutenant governor here, and any politician who's willing to dig into solutions and not be trapped by the political extremes that exist today. We were supposed to have Senator Tim Scott here. Senator Scott is from South Carolina. He is a co-author of the Investing in Opportunity Act, and so Opportunity Zones was the legislation that he championed. Because of the shutdown, he was not able to join us today, and you'll be hearing more about the impact of the shutdown on Opportunity Zones. But in lieu of Senator Scott being here, he recorded a video message that he wanted to share with you all. Senator Scott.
Hey everybody, this is Senator Tim Scott here, and I regret that I could not be with you in person today. I want to thank Jimmy Kemp for all the hard work that he's done around Opportunity Zones. As you are all aware, the Investing in Opportunity Act passed as part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act just over a year ago. And within the Investing in Opportunity Act is the legislation we call Opportunity Zones. Now, since you all know about Opportunity Zones, I want to share my intent behind the legislation. I created the Investing in Opportunity Act with the intent to give all Americans the power to succeed. Opportunity Zones give us a way to fight poverty in America and gives each state power by allowing them to designate their own Opportunity Zones. I grew up in a single-parent household. My mother worked 16 hours a day trying to keep food on the table and a roof over the heads of me and my brother. I never thought it would be possible for me to become a United States Senator. When you almost flunk out of high school, it certainly does not lend itself to becoming a U.S. Senator. More specifically, when you fail civics and world geography, English and Spanish, you don't typically rise up the food chain. The biggest lessons I learned during that challenging time is that you can think your way out of poverty or the power of education. If it hadn't been for education, who knows where I would be and what I would be doing. Truth is, my story is the same story as many other Americans, which is why I created my Opportunity Agenda. While the provisions originated on the federal level, it is really a local solution that requires buy-in at the state level as well as the local level for this to be successful. This is why the recent efforts and actions of the City of Baltimore and the State of Maryland are so important. With Governor Hogan's recent Opportunity Zone expansion and coordination with Mayor Pugh, we can expect to see more businesses and investors flooding into the area. By securing private sector dollars to be invested in these areas, we'll see more jobs created for families right here in these Opportunity Zones. This means more economic opportunities for local families and more options to keep young folks busy. This is especially important for our young folks who are on the brink of becoming young men and young women. We want everyone to benefit from Opportunity Zones, both young and old. We are encouraged by the executive order establishing the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council. We're hopeful that what we'll see will be more economic opportunities for urban and rural distressed communities throughout this great country. We are also closely monitoring the implementation process at the Treasury. A number of important questions remain, especially in regards to investments in operating businesses, a central goal of the underlying legislation. We designed this incentive to work for rural and urban communities alike, flexible for the types of investments that encourages growth that is scalable in those areas by allowing risks and costs of investing in distressed communities to be borne by many investors together through a fund structure. The Treasury's proposed regulations take an important first step towards realizing the intent of the Opportunity Zones incentive and providing clarity for communities and their leaders.
tell Senator Scott that his remarks got a seated ovation. He does regret not being able to be here, and he believes passionately in what this legislation is intended to do. Now, part of the reason he believes so passionately about it is because the guy who's going to moderate the rest of the conversation today really convinced Senator Scott and Senator Cory Booker, so a Republican and a Democrat, back in 2000, when did you all get started? 2013? 2013, John Letary was the founding co-president, co-executive director. He's now the, what's your title? I should know.
CEO.
CEO. So John is the CEO of the Economic Innovation Group. You can tell my preparation is unparalleled. But John is the CEO of the Economic Innovation Group, who really came up, they took my father's ideas and they wanted to make them real. They wanted to make them into policy. And they had the political savviness to understand you need Republican, you need Democrat. This is not about politics. This is about results. And that verse that I read earlier, John, I know these words speak so much to you. Those who devise good meet steadfast love and faithfulness. When you devised the Opportunity Zone, that's all you've been met with, right? Love and faithfulness. Look, this job is not easy. There are lots of issues that have to be dealt with. We have the benefit of having John Letary, who has been there since the conception of this legislation and this law. He's going to moderate this conversation, and we want you to be engaged. In the program that you were given, you've got note cards. Those cards are for you to interact. Write your toughest questions with love and faithfulness, but write your questions, and we're going to have an interactive component to the day at the conclusion of the day. But right now, I'd like to welcome the CEO of the Economic Innovation Group, a fellow Wake Forest alum and a dear friend, John Letary.
Thanks, Jimmy.
And now I get to introduce Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford. So Lieutenant Governor Rutherford is a Howard University alum in Washington, D.C. And when I was, my father and I had a business, Kemp Partners, during the 2000s, and my dad was on the board of Howard University. He'd love to tell people, oh yeah, I'm on the board of Howard. I'm their token white guy. But he was not token. He brought such passion and love for Howard University, and he was so proud of any alum who he had the good fortune to meet and engage, and he loved it when they told him, hey, I'm a Howard grad, I know you were on the board. So Lieutenant Governor Rutherford is a Howard alum, has been involved in Maryland. He's now the chair of the task force, the Maryland Opportunity Zone Task Force, which was created 2 weeks ago, announced 2 weeks ago, and he's going to talk about the goals and efforts behind that task force. Please welcome Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford.
First, I want to thank Jimmy and the foundation and Mark Weller and his team for putting on this event. It's really a fantastic chance to get together a year into Opportunity Zones being law and see where we are today and where the potential for Opportunity Zones may take us in the year ahead. No better way to start, I think, having worked with such a dynamic group of federal policymakers, Tim Scott being one of them, Cory Booker being another. This is really a handoff between the federal government creating a tool and a policy and putting that tool in the hands of state and local leaders. And nowhere around the country have we seen better engagement from state and local leaders than here in the state of Maryland and the city of Baltimore. So it's wonderful to be with you, Lieutenant Governor Rutherford, and I want to dive right in. You were involved deeply in the selection process for Maryland's Opportunity Zones, and now we're involved deeply in the implementation of this policy on the ground. Take us back to the selection of the zones themselves. What were your goals? What types of factors were you considering?
The main thing we wanted to do is, and the mayor mentioned it, is get the input from the local governments, the municipalities and the counties, to find out what was important to them in terms of that selection process. Now, you'll hear from Secretary Holt in a little bit. His team over at Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development did a lot of the sifting through the paperwork and all the requests that came in. But we wanted to get first of all, input from the locals, those who are on the ground, from their perspective, the leadership, the economic development people, in terms of where they felt met the qualifications, but also had the best opportunities for development. Then internally, of course, there were some counties that wanted every place in their county to be an opportunity zone, and we couldn't do that. We were only limited to 149. And so we had to sit down and kind of sift through and weigh the positives and the negatives and then the potential feedback. I mean that in a loving way. So
Loving kindness.
loving and kindness.
In early January, Governor Hogan announced a series of initiatives and legislation aimed at taking that federal tool and expanding it with state resources, support, and going beyond just the private capital, looking also at workforce, at housing, at job creation incentives. Talk to us about that announcement. What was the centerpiece of your thinking on what to do on the state side to match with that federal tool?
Well, the feeling was that the federal tax incentives were a good start. But to really make this successful, the state needed to put together a package around it, a number of tools in the toolbox to make it more inviting for investors, for job creation and development in these particular areas. And so initially the thought was we could expand some of the programs that we currently have. A couple of years ago, we were able to get legislation passed, which is called More Jobs for Marylanders Act. And so now we're going to push for legislation to expand that to all 149 opportunity zones. And what that does is it's, for 10 years, you do not pay property tax, you're not assessed special fees. I'm being told.
You need a little bit closer to your.
You all can't hear me?
We need a little bit.
Of course you can, you're in the front row.
Your actual voice.
It's probably more for the recording purposes.
Here we go. Thank you so much.
But 10 year, and also fees and some of the licensing charges that normally would apply. So that's over the next 10 years, we're expanding that. Also, we are creating Opportunity Works, which expands upon our EARN program for job training in those areas for businesses in the opportunity zones. We want to make sure that it's not just folks coming in from the outside into communities and reaping benefits. We want people who live there and work there to also reap the benefits as well. I think you had asked me before about the Technology Infrastructure Fund, $16 million that we're putting into that program that's going to be run by our group called TechCo. And it's really to take advantage of the leadership the state already has in cybersecurity and life sciences to make sure that we leverage those opportunities there. And then businesses will be eligible for additional tax credits. Oh, that sounds different. Additional tax credits they'll be available to them for all the jobs, every job that they create in the opportunity zone. So we've put together quite an attractive package of incentives to lead to additional development.
How's the reception been so far?
So far, it's been very good. Very good. Get a lot of calls and little emails and things of that nature, and I'm quite sure the secretary does too. We're going to be sitting down, I think, tomorrow, Thursday. Wednesday, we have this little program in between. So we're going to be sitting down and talking about, what we can do and what's coming in.
And you're the chairman of the task force.
Yes.
So talk about the role of the task force in seeing all these plans through.
Well, the role of the task force is making sure that we on the state side develop a full opportunity zone plan, kind of a strategic plan for what we want to do, and then look at other ways, identify potential additional incentives that can be put in place. And I think probably the most key is to identify opportunities to collaborate with the locals and making sure that no matter what we offer on the state level, the tax incentives on the federal level, that the business community, those who are looking to expand and develop, are not running into roadblocks at the local level. So it's to make sure that we collaborate with the locals to make sure that we're implementing this, but also so that they can hopefully move in lockstep with us to make sure we get these projects moving, and particularly on a timely basis.
That was going to be my next question, is how are you planning to coordinate between the state side and the local side? In a city like Baltimore, obviously, there's a lot of resources and programs already in place. We heard from Mayor Pugh that obviously she has a vision of being the leading city in the country in implementing opportunity zones, so you'd assume that strong coordination would be an asset. What does that look like? Is it building on programs and initiatives you already have in place, or is it really creating something new around opportunity zones?
No, I think it really is building on what we have and the relationships that we have. We have a very good relationship with the city of Baltimore, be it at the mayor's level or the various departments within the city of Baltimore. And so we will, when you say, how do you do it? It's kind of like picking up the phone or knocking on the door and going in and talking to them and working through this process. But I don't anticipate it being a challenge or a major challenge. There'll be places where there may be some differences in terms of how we move forward on projects, but I think everyone is going to be really rowing in the right direction, and particularly here in the city.
One thing you've mentioned is technology and the role of technology in helping to expand opportunity in the state. I've noticed that around the state of Maryland's opportunity zones, there are a lot of educational anchor institutions. Can you talk about how that played into the strategy for selection and what you're hoping to see built around those anchors?
That's a very good point. That is another element of the state resources that we can bring to bear. That we have a number of universities, particularly our public universities, university system, as well as Morgan and St. Mary's College, that we can utilize, leverage the programs that are going on there, the spin-off technology, the technology transfer that can come from these institutions, as well as they're a feeder system in terms of the workforce, particularly on the technology side and the STEM areas. So we're some of the opportunity zones, particularly in the city, are either adjacent to or have a university sitting in the middle of it. And the universities have, just by their very nature, there's a significant investment that goes in, either on the capital side or just the operating side. And so it's making sure that the plans of the community, the city, in this case, Baltimore, the state, and the university are all aligned. Anyone who's dealt with universities that happen to be, well, they can be anywhere. Usually there's some friction between the university and the community. It has happened in College Park. It has happened in other locales. You go to Boston, and the people up there complain about the colleges and universities, even though they love them, but it's those darn college kids, So we want to make sure everyone's playing together, and there's a lot of capital investment that goes into our universities.
Speaking of universities, opportunity zones accounts for a lot of the private investment capital that communities need. There's a human capital component to community success as well that goes far beyond what any incentive alone can account for. How are you approaching that challenge, particularly in places that have been deeply disinvested for long periods of time? What other efforts can be pulled in to this broader initiative that can help really raise the talent level and education level for folks locally?
Well, I mentioned the Opportunity Works program that we're putting in place in terms of job training for what the businesses that may be in these opportunity zones. So that can be, either at the professional level, but in most cases, to skilled labor positions. We want to make sure that we utilize our universities that are going to produce the technical and professional skills that some of these businesses are going to need. This is an area where we can further collaborate to make sure that we are doing those things in the community and that is most appropriate and appreciated. So we can collaborate with the locals to make sure that we're getting the kind of talent that they need.
This is a question I actually have no idea how you're going to answer, so good luck with this.
That's good.
So much of what we're seeing around the country are cities and states benchmarking against each other for opportunity zone implementation. And one of the things we see in the state of Maryland is you are pushing that envelope a little bit with some of the rollout that you've had so far, both on the broader package and as we're going to hear from Secretary Holt, I think, later, about the information exchange and the online tools. Right. But how much are you working across state boundaries and even informally, just trying to understand what are other states doing? How much of a race to the top have you seen so far in terms of states trying to understand how to best position their suite of resources and initiatives?
Well, I don't know about benchmarking, but, we do look at, the governor and myself go to different conferences. He'll go to the National Governors Association. There's a Complementary Lieutenant Governors Association. And there often are conversations that's for the general group that's there about opportunity zones or some other things, and you have a chance to talk to some of your counterparts in other states. I know there was an opportunity zone presentation for the National Governors Association, and the governor came back talking about that. And so it is discussed at the governor's level and lieutenant governors in different places, and I'm quite sure Ken's counterparts are talking about it as well, and our Commerce Department's counterparts. And so we don't measure ourselves against anybody. We kind of say we are Maryland. They should be following us. So, we'll continue to work.
So a lot of the conversation today will be focused on Baltimore, rightly so. The state also has many rural communities that have been designated. Talk about how the same type of tool can be applied in different ways in rural areas, and what is the state doing more broadly to expand the reach of opportunity in rural America?
Every county has at least one opportunity zone. We wanted to make sure that everyone had this potential and had the opportunity. And again, it's working with the locals in terms of what is best for them and what fits them. In some of these areas, you have other, like I said, the universities. You have Salisbury and University of Maryland Eastern Shore out on the eastern shore of Maryland, Frostburg in the west, that are anchors, in a sense, to many of these communities. And so some of the suggestions that have come in thus far are near the universities and play off of some of the technology that is spinning off from those universities. Agriculture. I used to work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and a lot of people think agriculture is just farming. Farming is a part of it, but biotechnology is part of agriculture. A lot of the research that is done in terms of biotech, it relates to how do you grow food, what's the nutrition, how do you grow other plants and things of that nature, biotechnology and pest-resistant plants and things of that nature that can be done in other areas. It does not have to be done just in the urban areas. And with technology, as you're talking about, the information technology, you can be virtually anywhere nowadays and do business.
So, put you on the spot again. I don't know if you've heard that there's been a government shutdown. And the
Really?
federal government's somewhat closed for business right now.
Maybe that's why we had to plow the Baltimore-Washington Parkway.
And I hear you did a great job. I hear you did a great job with that. When the government reopens, what would you love on the economic development side? The federal opportunity zones are a tool, a federal tool.
Mm-hmm.
What other tools? What other programs? What other type of coordination from the federal side would you like to see to empower mayors and governors, just like we see in opportunity zones, to expand the reach of their own policy efforts? If you had a wish list, what would that look like?
I guess, I'll be frank, if they get out of our way on certain things.
Can you give us an example of that?
No, I'm not going to do it today. Then I'll be getting some phone calls a little later.
I try.
I think they could collaborate with us a little bit more. Some of the mandates that come down from the federal government can be a challenge, and in some cases, are not well thought out. And so it just work with us a little bit more.
So is that
and I'm quite sure the locals say that about us at the state level.
I
too.
can't imagine. But looking at that model of opportunity zones where there's a federal standard, but it really was left to the states to decide where in those eligible communities are we going to put the zones. Is that a model that you think can be applied more broadly?
Yes, I think so. They recognize the importance of essentially federalism and what happens at the state and local level versus just dictating from Mount High in terms of this is exactly how it should be. So, no, that is a very good model, and that's why we have been very much engaging our locals to make sure that we can work there and we can be supportive and not necessarily come in and tell them where development should be.
Last question. I wanted to pull out a little bit more about what you're hearing from local communities and leaders themselves on the ground. What are their aspirations for opportunity zones? What are they hoping to see 10 years, 15 years down the road in terms of transformative results?
Well, they do want to see results and they want to see money. That's always usually the first question. Sometimes the second. The first might be, how are you doing? And then it's, we want money. But yeah, no, what we're hearing, they're excited about the chances, the opportunities to get some of the projects that they may have had on their books for a period of time, that they think this may be the catalyst to get the investment and get it moving forward. So the locals are excited about it, be it here in Baltimore or on the Eastern Shore in Western Maryland or the DC metro area as well. So we're looking forward to working with all of them.
Well, thanks so much for your time. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Welcome Jimmy back to the stage.